does a child learn? Okay, what does a child learn? Okay, so a parent who's inconsistent and unpredictable causes a child to be hyper attuned to emotional shifts. Because the parent is unpredictable and inconsistent, the child learns, I also must be hypersensitive to any changes. Why? Because I don't want to lose the affection of that parent. You have to think about it. The child is not looking at it from the parent's perspective, like, oh, my mum had a hard day at work, so that's why she might be different today. The child just sees there's inconsistency. Thank you very much, Monet. They just see inconsistency and unpredictability. And what they're trying to do is normalize and bring a predictability to the love and affection. They're trying to solve the equation. So what the child learns is, okay, I have to pay more attention so that whenever there's a shift, I will also shift with it, and I will make sure I attune to whatever the parent is giving so I can get my love from them. Problem is, it doesn't actually work. All right? So the child learns to be hypersensitive and hyper attuned or hyper vigilant to any shift. That is when you notice that people can even tell that there's a shift in energy even over text, like myself. Right? I can tell that even over text, I can tell, energy is different. I don't even need to hear your voice. I just see the way you're texting is different. I noticed that you're using different words. Your length of text has even shifted. Like people that are hyper vigilant pay attention to everything. They can even see just by your facial expression, little micro changes, your eyebrows slightly lifted, a little bit of a bead of sweat, maybe the way that your mouth is even contorting this time, right? Even the cologne you're wearing today, you think that you've chosen a cologne and they're like, the cologne you chose today is very different to what you normally could choose. No, something's off. Something's off. And what are they afraid of? They're afraid that the parent, when they are hypersensitive and hypervigilant, what the anxious person is really saying is, I want to make sure I nip it in the bud before you abandon me or reject me, because that's what I suffered in childhood. So that hypersensitivity and that hypervigilance is about paying attention to the emotional shifts. It's what people oftentimes call empaths. Most of us are not empaths. I'm sorry to tell you. Most of you are not empaths. Most of you are hypersensitive to emotional shifts. You got trauma. Can I say that again? No, let's talk about it. Because too many people be like, I'm an empath. You're not. You got trauma. Okay? You got trauma. Okay? You got trauma. You're not an empath. Let me write that down. You're not an empath. You've got trauma. Okay? And you're hypersensitive to changes. Okay? You're traumatized. Hold on. Let me write this down so you got this. Okay? Here we go. All right? You're not an empath. You're traumatized. Okay, let's talk about this really quickly. You're not an empath. You're traumatized. What does that mean? It means this. Some of you will claim that, I just feel energy. I feel the shift in energy. I'm just so hyper attuned. I feel when people just, it's different. The air shifts, I don't know what it is. I just feel it. And a lot of you are not empaths. It's because what you've experienced in your childhood is you've learned how to pick up on things because you were traumatized. In fact, some of you are so good that you can tell who's coming into the house by the way they turn the key in the door. Some of us, we know as African children, you know who's coming up the stairs simply by the weight of the footstep. Yeah? You know who's coming towards your room simply by the do. That's my dad's footsteps. I can tell by the way he's heavy-footed. You're not an empath. You're traumatized. And what you're realizing is because you've dealt with your parents in a particular way where they have made you feel like love is conditional, you are trying to pay attention for when it's about to shift. Because guess what? When they towards your room, you're not sure what parent you're going to get today. You might get, hey, son, it's good to see you. Where have you been? You've been in the room all day. Why are you in the room all day? Or you might get, hey, son, come outside. And you might get beat. So what's happening is a child is learning very quickly, I must discern the sound. In fact, the Bible even talks about this, that we should be able to discern sounds. What is a sound that you can't discern? You know what I'm saying to you? You must begin to discern the sound. And that's just trauma playing a role. So we screaming empath for a lot of us, you not. You traumatized, okay? And you overcompensating. Please, guys, let's get to that 15K. We're on 14.5. Don't stop. Tap the screen for me, okay? All right. Number 2, for anxious people, is that they get clingy. Number 2, they get clingy. Okay? Why do they get clingy? Well, for anxious people, if they cling and they hold on to you, you can't go anywhere. Right? The clinginess is because they have experienced a parent who can come or go, who can be present but not be present. So if they cling on to you, then you can't go anywhere. You can't shift, you can't move, you can't do anything. And they're clinging on to you to make sure that they're close enough so that you don't shift your position. You don't shift your energy towards them. You don't shift your mindset towards them. You don't shift anything towards them. They want you to stay consistent. It's funny because as you become more clingy, the more inconsistent some people are going to become because it's overwhelming. But they're trying to cling on to you to get consistency. Funny. Anxious people are the children. They learn to be overgivers. Why? Because for them, they feel like they're not worthy. Okay? And they have to overgive so you can stay. You see, the anxious person has learned that a parent will come or go. They're unpredictable. They may be good today, but bad tomorrow. And what the child learns is, if I overgive, then I will prove myself to be worthy, and you won't come and go. You'll be consistent. I will buy your love. Whether that's with my time, with my energy, with my money, with even my body, I will buy you. And I will always feel like I have to give more than actually what's required, because if I give more, then you'll stay. And so the anxious person is always giving more than they actually should give. Doing more than they should do. Because they need that validation and they need that reassurance as well. Okay? Number 4 is they are approval seeking. Anxious people are always looking for approval. Okay? The reason being, once more again, is because what they grew up in a household was they were not approved for being themselves. I was just thinking about this today as I was walking in, London. I was walking in London before I got home, and I said, oh, wait, one of the things that I do is that, I do seek approval. I realize I do seek approval a lot of times, even though I'm a more dismissive avoidant, but we're all dealing with anxiety in different ways. I do seek approval. Right? And that seeking approval is all about you not being approved. That's why this word seeking approval. And that comes in different ways. You become a chameleon to seek approval. You join groups that you don't really want to be a part of, but you want their approval and their validation. You say yes to engagements that you really want to say no to, but you're afraid that they're going to look at you and say they don't like you. You do things that is against your actual nature, but because you don't want to feel like you are not being liked. You don't want to feel like they're going to leave you for not doing it. Because again, love for you was conditional. You were loved when you were doing right. You were loved when you were doing good. You were loved when you were doing the right thing. But you weren't loved for just being you. And that's why you are always going to be seeking approval, becoming a chameleon, shifting and shaping yourselves into any type of shape so you can fit into that particular group. Right? Okay. All right. And then the 5th one is they are emotionally flooded in their behavior. So anxious people get overwhelmed. Okay. Anxious people get overwhelmed. They feel like they're being flooded by a lot of information, which is why them and fearful avoidance share common bonds. Okay. They feel like there's too much going on, overstimulated almost, right? And it's because, I believe one of the things is because, again, they're hypervigilance. They're taking in too much information. They're processing far too much information. And what's happening is, because they're trying to sense when you're going to leave, they're trying to sense when when you're shifting your energy, they're trying to sense when, something's not quite right. They're always what we call switched on. And that makes it difficult. Because if you're always switched on, you can't turn off. Anxious people, you struggle with sleep. Can we talk about this? Okay, let's talk about this. Anxious people, you struggle with sleep. Those of you who are anxious, you know what I'm talking about. Sleep is hard to come by. You try to sleep, but your body just seems to be going round and wow. It don't stop. Anxious sleep struggle. Okay? Anxious struggle with sleep. Okay? Anxious sleep struggle. Okay?